when we focus on becoming more human, the work that we do on ourselves becomes way more practical. Everything that you need is already there. Cut the bullshit. Like, we're just here to become more human and remember our essence.
And I want to feel free enough to be myself without being judged.
There were so many parts of me that were just like so repressed and so numb and so out of contact with my own humanity.
How do we recognize that sometimes the pain that we're carrying is not even our pain?
All I feel our ancestors are looking for is for someone to take responsibility.
Yeah, be the change maker.
That's it.
Be the catalyst, be that change maker. And we have it within us.
Yeah. You know, I got involved in crime and gangs and a lot of things. I did a lot of things that I wasn't proud of. Imagine if I die right now and like my son wakes up and finds me dead in the spare room. And I remember it so intensely in that moment, and I was just like, there is more than this.
Welcome to the Soul Revolution podcast, a space where stories find their voice and we find ourselves within them. The revolution starts within.
Hi Soul Revolution family, God's blessings and grace and light to you. Today I'm super excited because Alex reached out to me a few weeks ago and he was like, you need to get this guy on the podcast. He's like super cool, he's not like, you know, floaty. We use this word floaty a lot. So I was really compelled to kind of want to know more about Jack. Jack Villiers is the gentleman that we have on the podcast today. I was really taken in by a line that you used in your bio when I was like, send over your bio, let me find out a little bit more about you, and I'm going to try and remember it. So you said, you help people heal deeply, lead powerfully, and become more human. What does that mean? Yeah,
so for me, the most important sort of section of that phrase is really the becoming more human part. And I had this big realization over the last few years that a lot of the world of like personal development and healing, as you say, it can kind of be quite like floaty or quite, we're always trying to move towards something that's outside of us. It's like, oh, well, when I fix myself, when I change this about myself, I'll kind of become this person. And within that kind of construct, within like sort of personal development, healing, spirituality, I feel like it's quite exclusive and it's not that accessible. And one of the things that I realized after doing the work that I've done now for, you know, many years, and not so much the work I've done with other people, that as well, but also just like the work I've done on myself, I've realized that ultimately all we are doing is becoming more human. We're coming back to our like original essence of what it means to be human, to feel more, to express more, to access more of ourselves. And I believe that when we focus on becoming more human, the work that we do on ourselves becomes way more practical. It's not this thing that's out there, or it's like, I got to do another course, I got to do another thing. It's like everything that you need is already there. And I'm not saying that, you know, the inspiration we have around us on how we can grow and change, or people, you know, offering, you know, different work in the world of personal development healing isn't good. It's great that we have that, and there's so many things. But for me, in essence, it's like, cut the bullshit. Like, we're just here to become more human and remember our essence. And in that, I feel like there's such simplicity, but also in my own life, I've really experienced so much growth and empowerment from just focusing on that, and then the rest just kind of follows.
And what did that becoming more human look like for you in the early days compared to like what it feels like now for you?
Yeah, well, I think the world that we live in, everything is pulling us away from our humanity. I'm not going to get into like the core politics of it or how we've ended up in this situation. Like, I could talk about that. But for me, everything around us, whether it's like our phone, our device, and algorithms, it's like pulling our connection into an object rather than to ourselves or between each other. You know, if we think about like school and the kind of like industrial like age, and how if you look at everything that happened around the time that we like industrialized the world, it was focused on like kind of control and structure and be good at one thing and go to school and study and do all of these things, right? And so from a child, I really felt how throughout my life, all the challenges that I was experiencing, I was also just being pulled away from actually being human, which for me, what it means is the first thing is just to feel. Right? Like, the most human thing that we can do is be connected to our body. be connected to our emotions. It's like understand what's going on in this amazing gift of a body that we've been given, and being able to navigate it and to feel it and to understand it and to direct it and to, you know, then also connect with others. So I feel like everything's pulled us away from that. And for me, I think about, you know, even up until 5 years ago, there were so many parts of me that were just like so repressed and so numb and so out of contact with my own humanity. And it's like I could always feel that it was there, like there was a core essence of me that was there, but there was so much distraction and so much shit on top that I'd never known how to deal with, that my humanness didn't really show. And what did that look like? It's like the way that I behaved, the way that I acted, you know, the pain that I inflicted on myself and others throughout my life. And so if I think about kind of like 5 years ago and really where, you know, I always felt like there was some depth to me, that I was always like reflecting and aware of myself. I think people have been through a lot of pain. That's something that comes with it, that like awareness. But it was really 5 years ago when I was like, I just want to feel like me. And I want to be able to, you know, cry and grieve and struggle as much as I can feel joy and connection, and, you know, to be able to feel all of that. So yeah, 5 years ago, I really started to go on that journey of like reclaiming that for myself. And there's been so many different layers to it. I don't really believe that journey of becoming more of ourselves ever ends. It's really just a continuous like unfurling and learning and peeling back layers. And the more that I peel back those layers, the more that I like myself. Like I really am at a stage in my life, you know, where I can look at myself and I'm like, you're definitely not perfect. Like there's still parts of me, and it's not about being perfect, but there's still parts of me that I'm like holding myself accountable that I want to work on. And I feel are maybe not quite in alignment at times. But for me, the path of being more human is really just every time I fall out of integrity, it's like, cool, can I step back with that awareness? Can I take ownership? And can I take the next step forward? And so, yeah, I don't live my life with this kind of projection of who I'm going to become in the future. I live my life now and just meet what's in front of me and see if I can keep kind of forging a better version of myself that then makes a positive impact.
Yeah, and I guess that really comes down to like intentional living, right? So rather than, because we get so caught up in thinking about, like you said, like, oh, in 12 months time or in 2 years time or whatever, but actually what you're saying is, no, I'm going to live in integrity right now. And if I fall out of that, I'm going to step into it right now, opposed to like 6 months after I've done a course or etc.
Exactly, yeah, and doing it in the now. And I shared something the other day which I think is really important for this, which is the balance between the head and the heart, right? Like everyone knows this quote, the longest journey that you'll take is from your head to your heart. Don't get me wrong, that has been my journey. You know, like I was out of my heart for such a long time. And again, the society that we live in really pulls that away. It makes us articulate and over-rationalize and logicalize everything, right? And so it's like the heart is there to lead in the day-to-day, to be in that present moment, to feel your intuition, to make those decisions. But we were also given a brain for a reason, and when we have coherence between our heart and our head allows us, yes, to like project into the future. And the question for me is really like, how do we want to feel in life? So when I think about the future, if you asked me 10 to 15 years ago, I'd be like, when I got that Mercedes, when I got that yard, when I'm doing all of this stuff, whatever, all of those things. And a lot of those things I managed to get. And then I was like, I can't even feel the joy of any of these things, right? But for me, the head really, when you have coherence between the head and the heart, it's like sitting with that, like, what is my vision for the future? How do I want to feel? And the more that we regulate to that, the more that we create that within ourselves, then that future starts to appear because the opportunities are there. And then it's again in those moments when we're met with a challenge, rather than run away or freeze or whatever it is, can we meet that challenge and kind of show up in our humanity for ourselves and others. So
today's episode is sponsored by Ansol. Ansol are on a mission to build soulful spaces, empowering communities and nurturing individuals. To find out more, connect with them on their socials or via their website. You said about 5 years ago, that's when maybe things started changing for you radically. Tell me about what led you to that place, and then what were your like initial steps in stepping into meeting yourself within your heart? I feel like 5 years ago,
who was I? I was actually just writing this down in like a newsletter that I was writing, which I was sharing about. I mean, I'll give context. It makes me feel emotional saying it. Today I'm 3 years sober, which
amazing.
I'm celebrating.
Well done.
Today? Today, yeah.
Yeah, that's massive. Yeah, excellent.
Which I'm celebrating myself for. And even if I think about kind of 5 years ago when this journey started, as I said, I'd had this projection of life, you know, because I grew up in a difficult situation. I grew up with some poverty. My dad wasn't around. Various things were happening, right? And so I had this projection of like, oh, well, when I hit these parts of my life and I get to these things, everything's going to be fine. So like I said, you know, I worked really hard. I became successful. I got into coaching and leadership. I worked in tech companies. I had a really amazing career coming from nothing, no academics, no any of those things, right?
You went to school, but you didn't go like uni or anything? I left
when I was 16.
Right, okay.
I left. I was basically just like, kind of like doing illegal stuff and had a car washing business. I used to wash cars when I was 16 and I left school and did all sorts of jobs and then I went to the city maybe when I was like 18 or something.
What was your first city job?
Recruitment.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm still good at that, you know, when in human work, the organization that I run, people are always like, well, so what's your role? Obviously, I'm a facilitator, I'm a coach, I like design the experience, but really I just recruit people and bring them together. If you were to ask me what's the gift that I've been given in this life, it's people. And it's seeing the connections of how you can bring people together and create something really special. All of those things were, you know, I had this projection of how life was going to be. And when I got those things, everything was going to be okay. And then I started to get those things. But this emptiness that I felt, a lot of it in relationship to my father, also things that had happened in my life. You know, I got involved in crime and gangs and a lot of things. I did a lot of things that I wasn't proud of. But even though I had the house, I had the car, I had the financial stability, you know, the woman I'm going to marry next year, Holiday, who's a beautiful, amazing woman. I have, you know, had a beautiful child with her. I already had a daughter from a previous relationship who was beautiful. So I had all of these things. Everyone's like, yeah, Jack, man, you should be fine. Everything's good, man. Like, you got life good, man. You're sorted now. And just the reality was I just felt empty. And the way that I dealt with that emptiness was really through drugs and alcohol. It was through numbing. It was through food, going out on binges, just getting really off my face. And I ended up in this cycle where so many people would have looked at me and been like, oh, Jack's fine. Like, whatever, man, you go out on like a bender every now and then, that's not a problem. But it was killing me. There was something inside me that was like, this is just such an injustice to who I am as a human being and to what I have to offer. And, you know, I always remember this moment where, you know, I'd been out on a bender and I'm lying in bed and I just had this thought. I was like, imagine, you know, my heart was really pumping. I've been doing loads of cocaine. I was like, imagine if I die right now and like my son wakes up and finds me dead in the spare room. And I remember it so intensely in that moment. And I was just like, there is more than this. And like this inner sort of voice came in of like, I do deserve love. I do deserve I do deserve to be able to make decisions. And it was really a kind of around that moment. And it was a long journey after that of, again, falling out of integrity, relapsing, all of these things. But it was a moment where I was like, something has to change. And I was really lucky then to see a bit of like inspiration. It was actually my lady who was like, oh, watch this TED talk about men's work, watch these sort of things, you know, as a good woman does. She always just kind of opens the pathway a bit and is like, hey, you should look at that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good woman. And and so I started to see those things and I was like, and at that time, you know, I had a lot of stuff to work on around my father and I was like, oh, okay, like there's a way forward here. Oh, okay, shit, there's people who aren't just going to be like, you're fine and minimize it, but be like, no, you are in pain. Like, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And it was that invitation when I started doing that work that just everything started to change. And it's crazy because it's quite a short amount of time, but I really feel that it was just like a divine intervention. And it's like, yes, the divine intervention, but also some hard fucking work.
Yeah.
And I still stand by that today. It's not just like, oh, I do this and everything's going to be easy now. It's like, it can be hard work for me every day. That I don't go out and just get numb, or that I do hold myself accountable when I show up not in the way that I'd want to in a relationship, or I do look at my bank account and where I'm overspending money or whatever it is, you know? But for me, it's like always shining a light on those things is the way that I have now lived my life for 5 years. And obviously, I feel really content, you know? Honestly, I feel content in the challenges, not that they're not uncomfortable.
Of course.
They are.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's like you just hit on something and you said, you know, it's a short amount of time. And what I've realized is I think when you meet yourself at a place of deciding to take radical responsibility and confronting yourself, and it's not an easy thing, that's when I feel that transformation is almost like it can catapult you, you know, and it doesn't have to be this like long, drawn out process of like continuous healing, but I think the key thing is you have to be ready to confront yourself. And that's what it sounds like. It sounds like that something shifted within you where you were like, okay, I'm going to confront myself. I'm going to take radical responsibility, and I'm just going to move through this now.
Yeah. And there's something that came up for me when you said that I feel a lot of people just get stuck in what I would call a healing trap.
Yeah, I call it a loop.
A healing trap where it's basically like, okay, so I'm going to start doing these things. I'm going to start working on myself. Yeah. That's great. And you always end up looking for something outside of yourself.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, the next course and the next coach, and I'll go to the next retreat, and I'll go and do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to be a breath worker, and then I'm going to do yoga, and then I'm going to drink ayahuasca, and all of these things. And don't get me wrong, all of those things are powerful, and they all may serve a place in your healing journey. And for people who are practitioners or hold those things like respect, if they're doing that in a good way. But ultimately, the healing starts at home, and it's about integrating the parts of yourself that you're not able to usually regulate, you're not able to handle. And so I really believe I want to, you know, create more of a movement or more of an influence, just from my own experience that I would like to share, not because I'm here to do it and it's like a thing that's been given to me, but it just feels normal to invite people to like step out of that healing trap for a second sometimes and actually just look at yourself, you know, and take a moment and actually try and live life in this way rather than kind of constantly going towards other things that you think are going to create that change. It's really like, it's down to you. It's your responsibility. And all of these things are here to inspire you. But ultimately, when you look in the mirror, it's like, it's you against you, you know,
100%.
and having the support around is amazing. But I would love to see a world where people can take more of that ownership, and we're more talking about that rather than constantly saying, hey, look at this thing, this is amazing, you should do this, you should do that, because we're so influenced. And then people say to me, they're like, I've spent 50 grand over the last few years on my personal development and I still feel the same. Yeah. And it's because that can be another form of bypassing as well.
Exactly, you know? That.
Yeah.
How do you, if somebody's watching and they're like, okay, I've done like all the courses, I've done this, I've done that, I've invested in loads of mentors, I've had counselling, I've done it all. I've sat with ayahuasca, like I've done it all, and I'm still feeling the same, or I think what can happen is that it's like a temporary fix, isn't it? Yeah? So it's a temporary fix, but then they come back to essentially how they feel, which is probably emptiness, confusion. Yeah. What would you say to that person? Where do they start?
Yeah. I think for me, it's a commitment to living in the reality that you are in. So often I have found that with all of these different types of experiences, of course, there's something so beautiful. Like we had a human work experience, or, you know, the human work experience that we run a couple of times a year. So we had like 60 people in May all together, incredible weekend, incredible week, super powerful. Like, you know, for that moment, you come out of all of those things that are happening in the world, all of the challenges, and you're just able to like be so present with yourself and others and work on yourself. And it's absolutely transformational, right? And also, you're coming out of your day-to-day reality, right? And you're experiencing that. And what I always say with these things, and I share this in the integration talks, is like, the aim of the game is to take 20% of what you experience there and apply that to your actual reality. And if you do that, you'll start to see things shift. But I think what happens is people get caught in the loop, as we were saying, where they're doing those things and then they come back into their reality and they just like can't integrate it and can't cope with it. And for me, that means that you're not actually doing the work to regulate and, you know, to regulate yourself in the truth of what your reality is. Okay, I'm financially struggling. I'm in a relationship I don't want to be in. I live somewhere where there's no community. These are all like really challenging things. So I'm not being like super hard on people.
No.
But you need to get truthful about what your reality is and to be able to regulate in that reality to change it. Because ultimately the pathway for me isn't running away from it. That rarely works. The same problem or whatever it is that you're dealing with will come back around the other way. So for me, it's like, can you look at that truth? Can you regulate yourself? Can you lean into it? And can you get really clear on like, okay, well, if this is my reality now, how do I want to change it? And again, that's like blood and bones work. Like you ain't going outside of yourself, whatever. Like that is you doing work on yourself to make some hard decisions. And then the key thing for me, that completely changed my life, and for me is just something that I will always want to surround myself with, is community. It's like all the challenges and the things that happen to us, the trauma, the pain, whatever, it's all relational, you know? Like most of it's relational. It happens in relationship to someone else. So it's like, until we are in community, how can we truly like heal, you know? And so I know not everyone has that where they live, and I often say to people, whether it's global community, whatever it is, but find yourself around people who are also sharing that vision, that path, and that just adds so much to going on that journey. Because I think a lot of people still, even in personal development, for me, it's either like in isolation, or often it feels exclusive. It's like, oh, well, my hat's not big enough, I don't have enough feathers to go and hang out with those people. Do you know what I mean? And for me, it's just like, we're just all different people, and it's just like, find those people, different shapes, sizes, backgrounds, who you can resonate with. And that's where going to certain things and putting yourself, whether it's like Soul Revolution Festival or a retreat or, you know, a community thing or whatever it is, I think makes a big difference as well.
Talking about community, because you hit on something earlier on, when you were younger, you were part of like, you know, did a bit of crime, gangs. And I've had a conversation with somebody who was also like part of gangs when they were younger. And when they were talking to me, I was like, essentially you're looking for community, like you're looking for a place of belonging, right? So are you happy to talk about that part of your life?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like what led you there? How old were you?
Yeah. I think it was pretty much from kind of like secondary school. And obviously I was sort of observing my brother and what kind of he was involved in. I went to the same secondary school. There was two things for me that I was looking for. One was male role models, and the other was community, and to feel like I belonged. Because most of my life, when you're abandoned by one of your parents, ultimately I was left with this belief that I wasn't worthy or valued, and I didn't really like feel like I belonged anywhere. You know, even though my mum did everything that she could to create that within our home. And so then as you get to those kind of teenage years, which are like, you know, really important in terms of your development, you're kind of starting to stand on your own 2 feet. You can go out on your own, and you're kind of looking around and thinking, okay, well, like, where are my people, right? Because as humans, we naturally look to be part of community. And anyone who says they don't need community and they're human or connection, they're just fucking lying to themselves anyway. And so for me, what that looked like is I looked around, you know, where I grew up and my school, and I guess what I would say is I found another bunch of orphans, you know, other boys who were kind of like similar situation, whether it was mum or dad had left or the parents were there but the home situation wasn't great, and we were kind of all just orphans, and it was like, oh, okay, cool, like if we come together then we have each other, you know. But obviously when you've experienced pain and you are in sometimes a difficult situation most of the time, which I was creating for myself, you know, and you've got no one role modeling other than the guys who look like the gangsters, they got the nice stuff, they're selling drugs, whatever, and then you're kind of just like, oh great, all right, so this is what we're meant to do. If I do that, then I won't, you know, I'll have money, I won't turn up on non-school uniform day. I always remember this one day for me where I was like year 7, and it was like first non-school uniform day, and I went in and I had shit clothes, and I felt shit, I didn't have the nice train, and there was other people who didn't. I was like, I remember someone taking the piss out of me, and I was like, and then I looked over at some of the older boys, and I was like, oh, they got like chains and nice fucking Air Forces, and I was like, that's what I got to do. That was my male role model, and then around that is the community that's created, and especially with brotherhood, it feels like camaraderie. Like when you're robbing people together and you're running from the police together, there's a feeling of like, we're in this together, you know. So really it was the first brotherhood that I experienced, but obviously the challenge is, as time goes on, living your life in that way has repercussions, you know, and you start to see, and people start to then turn on each other, and for me, I became a person who wasn't truthful and was manipulative and was kind of in a way out for themselves, although there were some people I still had that brotherhood with. At the same time, it was survival a lot of the time. So you're like, cool, well, like, you're my friend now, but I might have to fuck you over one day, and like, I'm okay with that. So I see how that plays out a lot in certain situations, and with everything that I've experienced in life, it was also such a blessing, because then when I went into my corporate career, I was a hustler. You know, I knew
especially
how to,
in recruitment, right?
Yeah. It was just like I just basically traded like the streets for an office. But all the same skills apply. I was obviously very rough around the edges. And so it was great. I love those things, and I think it's important to share this. I would invite everyone to really reflect on the relationships that you have with the stories of your life.
Beautiful.
So, 5 years ago, if we were having this conversation, I would come with this energy of like, life was hard, I had to do things, and this is how it was, and, I had to make something of myself, and I had to survive, and all of these things. And ultimately, that is a victim mentality that I'm living in, right? And now when I look at it, I think, okay, there were some challenging things, but most of those things, even though I was growing up in a single mother household, financial difficult situation, like I created a lot of those things and perpetually created them. And so they're my responsibility. And of course, now I got all these amazing learnings from them. But it's really important to see if we still kind of live in that story a little bit as a victim, or do we relate to that story and we look at it objectively and say, that happened in my life, I take responsibility for it, and I know how it's fuel to move me forward. So I think the relationship.
Okay, so let's do something. So their story is, okay, my mum was an alcoholic, my dad wasn't around, we had no money, and that's their like baseline story, How do they flip that? What is the new narrative? How can they change that? So just like a really practical step.
They're never going to be able to change the narrative if they don't face the pain. You can't change a narrative without facing the pain, because beyond the pain is the deeper understanding of yourself, is the deeper understanding of your emotions, is a deeper understanding of your gifts. So before you change a narrative, you have to face the pain. And the pain is just there to be felt. The pain isn't, there's no other thing that the pain desires than to be felt, because a lot of the time in these situations, especially when we're children, and again, how society has taught our parents to parent, obviously there's a big change in this now with more conscious parenting, which I know as a father, but we just don't feel it and we just repress it, right? And it's like we can't flip the script and change the narrative if we don't feel what's there to be felt. So for me, the first step was always feeling. It was like, to that person, it's like, okay, maybe they're really angry. One of their parents was an alcoholic and didn't show up for them. So it's like, that anger needs to be felt. And the simplest framework that I work with my clients, with human work, and this is really kind of what I preach as the way that feels very human in terms of living, is we need to work on the pain that we feel so we create more space in our body, right? So say like I'm all blocked up, in my situation, I'm all blocked up with this pain, with this anger about my father, with things that I've had to do, and I'm a victim and all of that kind of stuff. If I don't alchemize that and create more space, how can a new narrative come in around how those things actually shaped me and made me really successful, or how that's motivated me to become an amazing father, which I can hand on heart say that I am, always doing my best, and I'm a good father to my children. So it's like, for that person, it's like, face the pain, feel what needs to be felt, create more space. And when more space is created in your body, then you can let new things in.
Wonderful.
So it's like simple 2 steps. Obviously, there's so many layers to that. But in its simplicity, that's what it is. So
a constant theme that comes up with women that I've like worked with or in circles is, we suffer a lot of shame. And then recently, I've been speaking to men, and although they don't use the word shame as much, there's like, I'm hearing and sensing, men actually struggle with shame as well, but it comes through in a different way. Linking back to your time of like crime and in gangs, I'm sure you maybe carried a similar emotion for some time. How did you overcome that? And how did it manifest through your life when you were not conscious of it?
I think shame's definitely been present for me. I don't know if it was like the predominant thing that I felt from the experiences that I had, but obviously, prior to human work, I worked with like thousands of men doing the kind of work that I do now, and I've seen a lot of men carry that shame. And for me, when it comes to shame, underneath shame, there's kind of a belief that I'm bad, that I'm broken, right? And so I really see how that belief that then creates shame has a massive impact as people go through their lives.
If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, comment, and subscribe.
will be deeply appreciative. Join our revolution. The revolution starts within. When you were leaving kind of like the gang culture, etc., what were your emotions that like would... I think we all suffer from emotions or have suffered from emotions that almost cripple us.
Yes, yeah.
You know, like, what were those emotions, if you can identify them, and then how did you kind of work through that?
Yeah.
And also, how were they manifesting in your life as well?
Yeah. So the thing for me during that period is I became like a master at numbing myself. I honestly can tell you that from the age of, you know, and a lot of challenging things were happening, from the age of like 10 to maybe like 17, I didn't cry once.
Wow.
I was like stone. And you know, I could do a lot of bad things. You know, I was causing other people pain. I was causing myself pain. I was, you know, constantly living in a state of survival, often in so many different ways, whether it was relationships with women, whether it was the work I was doing, the things that I was involved in, the, like, you know, criminal activity, or just in general, like, yeah, doing some quite messed up things. And I just learned to like bury it all so deep. And so what would then happen is when something, for whatever reason it was, sort of like penetrated that armor, it would just be like an explosion. So I was a very angry person, like really, you know, really bad temper, could really just like flip and just be completely lost in it. Or, you know, an explosion for me could have looked like I would really then like just make it my mission to hurt someone, you know? I would be like, oh, this is, I don't know what to do with this. This is my pain, it's my energy. I'm just gonna like project it at someone and like hurt them because I've found an excuse to do so. But the emotions that were really under that for me were mainly anger and sadness. You know, there was a lot of anger because my father left, and it was like, yeah, why? What was wrong with me? You know, and I guess there was some shame there in the sense that, you know, like, am I broken? Am I not good enough? You know, was I worth choosing drugs and alcohol over? Why did you never show up, right? So there was a lot of rage and anger, and I think once I kind of started to work through and understand some of that rage and anger, and beneath that there was a lot of sadness. You know, there was basically a child that just wanted to be loved, that just wanted to be cared for, that just wanted, like, you know, to do the normal things that they would with a father, and to grieve that loss and to have that sadness. So I kind of see that now, and it's interesting. You know, I was sharing before about you kind of make more space and you can let new things in. I don't believe you know, for me, like, the wound still leaves a scar, and I still expect that during my entire life, in certain situations or when certain things come up around that relationship with my father, that I will still tap in and feel some of those things. Again, it's just my relationship is different. Like, it was Father's Day on Monday. I shared some stuff around this, and you know, I went around to my mum's house because I was in London from Ibiza, and my mum gave me this picture of my dad when he must have been probably the age my son is now, about 4.
Okay.
And I looked at it and I thought, fuck, this just looks like my son, Ocean. I was like, wow, it really looked like him. And instantly, you know, I feel emotional about it now, but I just started to, you know, cry a little bit and started to feel that grief of that loss, you know, but the anger has been kind of alchemized. And now there's just this kind of deep pool of grief, but at the same time, I felt so much joy in that moment, because I was like, wow, like, what an insane and beautiful adventure and tapestry life is. And the, you know, if you had have brought up my dad to me around my teenage years and said, oh, what about your father? You know, he was occasionally trying to call or whatever, but very rarely. I'm like, don't talk to me about that dickhead. Yeah. Completely, again, closed off. And now to be able to sit there and look at a picture of this man who never showed up for me, but to be able to cry tears of grief of never having that, and also joy of just like, wow, this has led me to what I'm doing now. And so for me, these emotions and even the things that sometimes we repress, when we learn to access them, they become superpowers. You know, the anger becomes that drive, that willingness, the creativity. The grief and the sadness becomes deep love. The shame can be transmuted, where we feel that we're so broken that actually feel we're so beautifully imperfect, you know? Each of them have this kind of transformative quality, and that's really what I've kind of taken from all of those things that I carried and sort of repressed during that time in my life.
So you are doing a talk at Soul Revolution called, have we got a name for it?
So the talk is called It Ends With Me, Breaking Generational Cycles.
Yeah, okay. So this brings me back to the conversation around your dad. So you shared off camera something about your dad and your dad's childhood, and I'm guessing how that then impacted him and showing up and how to be a father, and then him making the decisions of like stepping away from being an active dad in your life. How do we talk about it? How do we stop those intergenerational, the intergenerational trauma that passes down? How do we identify it? How do we stop it? How do we recognize that sometimes the pain that we're carrying is not even our pain? How do we recognize that? What do we do?
I mean, the truth is, and this is kind of like the beauty of the human experience, whatever you are carrying generationally will most definitely be presented to you. I'll give you some examples in my life. My dad obviously abandoned us, was never in my life, drink, drugs, whatever, found relationships challenging, wasn't faithful, variety of things. I had my daughter when I was 23, and the relationship with her mother became very, very difficult for a number of reasons. And then when my daughter was a year old, it got to a point where it was like, this relationship is not sustainable. It's like, for me, it was massively traumatic and abusive, and I think she would probably say the same. We'd have to agree to disagree on the experiences that we had. And I remember in that moment feeling this kind of almost this despair of like, okay, I'm not going to be with her mother. I'm like 23 going 24 years old. Like, how the hell is this going to work? I'm finding this so difficult. Like, everything in my body was screaming to me, just run away and start again. It was just like, you know what? I love this child. It's completely changing my life, but there's no way I can do this. I do not have the capacity to cope with this. And I remember it was around this time, it was because, this time of year, you've got Father's Day, and then you've got my birthday, which is next week. And I remember the relationship ending, and I remember leaving that conversation and obviously, being out of the house where my daughter lived for a couple of days, and having all those thoughts like, fuck this, like I can't do this, like this is just what it is. Maybe in a couple of years it will work out, but like I just need to, there's no way I can be involved in this situation or be in my child's life. And so that was I'm sure there was almost an identical moment with my father in relation to me and my brother and his marriage with my mum. And I almost felt that. Now that I look back on it, I can almost feel like the timeline, how it's like exactly the same thing happening on a different timeline. And ultimately in that moment, if I had have chosen to run away and to turn my back, then of course the cycle would continue. But I don't know what it was, because again, I hadn't really started working on myself yet. I had some depth, I had a lot of awareness about myself because of the life that I'd had. But something told me the most important thing is stay in this child's life. Like, fight to the death to stay in this child's life. And that was a huge moment where the trauma that I had experienced, obviously in a way, just started to be integrated into my family line. Because I didn't do the thing that was the easy option, which I just was screaming in my face to do. And so when we think about these things, whatever you are holding that's like an intergenerational thing is going to present itself. And I believe that the job is to build your capacity in your nervous system, within yourself, within your ability to process your emotions, with your ability to follow your intuition, is to make the other decision. Make the decision that changes. For me, that was becoming a very present and proactive father in all my children's life. For me, that was getting sober. Not falling down that same slippery slope, and continuing in that cycle, even though it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Like, it was. For me, it was bad. It's not about comparing to someone who was living on the streets or whatever. So we need to build our capacity to be able to, when those moments come, to take the other option, the option that isn't continuing that cycle. And I think what's really important to say here is there's some big examples that I just shared there, right? Like about getting sober and showing up for my children and so on and so forth. But there's also micro examples, of just how we operate in our day to day, the decisions that we make, how we hold our energy, how we hold ourselves. And it's like, I don't know my dad. I never really experienced him, but I really can feel, when maybe there's a pattern playing out that I know from what people have said, or just how I kind of intuitively feel connected to him from a spirit perspective, that those things are happening. And so it's about making the other decision and getting it out in front of us. You know, like knowing, I've been looking at so many different parts of like my family line, or knowing like, okay, this is one of my family who had a big impact in my life, or was an influence in my life, and they have money troubles. They struggle to work with the finances. It's like, I also have that. Okay, cool. Let me inquire about that. It's like, there's always, you know, a route. And what I want to say is, for me, it's not like blaming. I'm not like, Dad, you gave me all these things, and no, you know, but it's like, okay, this has shown up in my life. This has now been mine to carry. A lot of people are like, it's not mine to carry. And in a way, yes, it's not yours to carry, but you're carrying it. So it is yours.
Yeah.
So it's like, in that, there's an empowering thing of like, great, I have the, you know, the power within myself to work on these things and to alchemize them. So yeah, just making a different decision. And it's all about awareness. Once you have awareness, you have a choice. You know, for so many years, the reason nothing changed for me is I wasn't tapping into the awareness because I was so rock hard and numb. And it's like, as soon as you allow the awareness to come online, then it's like, okay, I have decisions now. Okay, I can start taking small steps. And then that's where the piece that I mentioned about having the people around you, you know, who are doing that too, is like, you know, you're all then calibrating to that frequency of like, hey, let's talk about this stuff. Like, what is it you're experiencing? And that's so enriching, because we're never alone in this stuff. We are and we're not, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's the balance of it all. I think it's awareness meeting action, right?
That's it.
And that then will bring the change. I really liked what you said in terms of like, it's not ours, but it is ours at the same time. And that's so true. It's like, okay, like we can look at our stories and you're like, yeah, well, my mum's story is not my story, or, you know, my sister's story is not my story, but it on a cellular level, we are carrying it.
Yes.
I don't want it to be my story.
Yeah.
So therefore, in the not wanting it to be my story, I have to become very aware of how it's playing out, cellular, and then through the manifestation of it playing out in this realm with me. And then, so the awareness, then the action is like, okay, now I no longer want it, so I need to then make other decisions so I can change the narrative slightly,
And all I feel our ancestors are looking for is for someone to take responsibility.
Yeah, be the change maker.
That's it.
Be the catalyst, be that change maker. And we have it within us.
Yeah.
You know, we have it within us.
Yeah.
Talk to me about fatherhood then for you.
Yeah.
You've got 3 beautiful children, due to be married next year.
Yeah,
You've got a lot of exciting things going on.
Yeah. No, fatherhood has been, for me, like one of the most deeper spiritual paths. And also being in, you know, like a loving relationship and like creating a loving relationship. These two things for me, again, like when we talk about, we were discussing it earlier, like you can go out and try all these things. The work starts at home. You know, it's like when your kids are like screaming, or you're stretched on capacity, or, you know, you're having conflict with your partner and you really just can't like understand where they're at, or like slow down to really like meet them. These things for me have expanding my capacity beyond belief when I think about my ability to hold and to be present and all that. And it's not, again, it's not that I'm perfect now, but that capacity is there, and the awareness is there that when I fall out of integrity, or I'm not quite showing up in the way that I want to, it's like, okay, great, now I can start to work on that proactively and change it over a period of time. So for me, fatherhood is the gift that keeps on giving. It's just an unlimited pool of learning, of reflections, seeing how, I always like to say, each child carries a message. And if I look at my 3 children, obviously one only came like 4 months ago, I'm kind of still feeling into his message, but each of them comes at a certain time and brings a certain message and a certain reflection. And for me, as I said, it's just this incredible like metamorphosis of believing like, oh, I don't know if I can hold anymore, I don't know, how can I expand my capacity? And it's like, you can, because you will, because when you love someone that unconditionally, like your heart will stretch, you know, and I really feel this with each of my children. It's basically just been a massive heartbreak, but rather than my heart like shattered, my heart's just been broken open to be able to feel more. And for me, I really want to see more parents in whatever way is authentic to them, but in a human way, taking that responsibility for how we raise our children. Again, I haven't always made the best decisions, and it's taken me time to learn, especially having a child at 23. Now I look at it and I think, wow, it's so subtle but so powerful, just the influence that I can have on stewarding these beings into their life, not controlling them, not turning them into something that I want them to be, but really tuning into what they're here to do, for them to access more of themselves. And I'm just kind of curious, because I see this with a lot of children who are around me in the community I'm in, and other people that I meet that are trying to kind of consciously parent in this way. I'm just like, wow, you know, there's obviously, of course, so many things going on in the world right now that are feeling really fucking bleak and dark. And like, what kind of world are our children inheriting? And at the same time, there's so much hope. You know, when I have conversations with my son, who's like 4, soon to be 5, or when I'm having dinner with my daughter and I'm hearing about ideas she has or awareness she has about her emotions, and I'm like, man, if I was like that at that age, what would I be? What would I be like now? And then, of course, they're going to have their own pain as well. So for me, fatherhood is the gift that keeps on giving. And I think the point we've been discussing about community really applies for parenting. Parenting's hard, and so doing it on your own is just a rogue decision. And we weren't meant to raise kids in this kind of like traditional structure of like the mum and the dad, the kids, and then you just do all of that. It's like, we need the aunties, we need the uncles, we need the elders, we need the other children, so they're sharpening each other. We need the friends in community. And I really see how when parents have that, we move away from this thing of like, I have to be everything for this child, because you just can't. You know, that child needs other people that are going to offer something that you can't, and that's not a failure as a parent. That's actually just the beauty of living in connection and community. It's
like village mentality, isn't it? That's what it is, and I think that's what's really missing, you know. But it's so expansive when you do experience it, and you have like so much knowledge and wisdom to tap into, you know, especially with elders and, like you said, aunties, uncles, like all of that. It just becomes a really, I think, more fulfilling and enriching life for the child, but then equally for the parent, there's like I'm supported, you know, I'm not by myself doing this. So And
that's really with human work, now that I'm clear on what it is that we've created, that's really what I see. It is like a return to village life. It's people coming together with, you know, like a collective where they have shared skills, shared resources, shared support. And it's not this complex of like, well, Jack's the co-founder and like he's the leader and he's in charge, right? And like he's telling us how to do it. It's like, yes, maybe I'm holding a pillar in that space, but it's this beautiful co-creation where it's like, come together and see the magic that happens when you have a clear intention. For example, like healing, stepping into our own self-leadership, finding our own sense of belonging. And all you need is that intention, people, and then like the structure around it. And I can tell you, like, the river will flow, whether that's around parenting, whether that's around people doing work on themselves. You know, all you need is, like that structure and that intention, and then an openness to co-creation. And it just creates something so beautiful and so enriching and so diverse and so just like, I mean, this is the way for me anyway.
And sounds like you found your purpose, would you say?
I kind of, when I think about purpose, I really feel that our purpose is just to feel and to live and to experience. But for me, with human work, and I think this really, you know, it comes from my background, and I think I said this to you when we met today. I remember going to a conscious festival for the first time like 3 years ago, and I walked in and I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, who are all these people? I was like, I didn't even know any of this existed, because for me, I'd done a bit more of my first stages of my journey working in sort of men's work, but I hadn't really ever plugged into this whole ecosystem, which obviously now I'm plugged into, and it's amazing. And for me, one of the things that really comes through around human work is I've always loved, even when I think about the way I grew up, experiencing people from all walks of life. You know, like I grew up, one of my best friends down the block was Pakistani, and I'd go and like stay overnight and break fast with them and do Ramadan. I have friends from all like 4 corners of the earth. And I think that when we create healing spaces where people from all walks of life feel that they can walk into them, and there's not this exclusivity of like, oh, I have to be like kind of this, or like, you know, that I guess is, for me, it's a bit of like a guru frequency of kind of like, you've got to be this sort of person to do this. And that can come across in the way things are. There can be projections, right? It may not be like that. It may just like look like that in how we see it. But I do really feel like we need more inclusive personal development and healing spaces. Someone was saying that in the retreat that we had in May, and they said in one of the closing circles, like, there's people here, every color, every shade, from the age of like early 20s to 70s.
Wonderful.
And it's like this beautiful co-creation, and I think that's what life is. I think it's like, so that's kind of like a bit of a personal mission for me. You know, I want the people who are coming from the streets, I want the people who are, you know, maybe they've grown up in this way, whatever it is, but that just creates so much richness, because then we realize that in essence, as humans, we're not that different from each other.
We're not. Yeah,
no, exactly.
It's been something that keeps coming up for me recently. When I'm speaking to people, Gurjit actually did a heart activation workshop yesterday here, and which was beautiful, really amazing. And are you doing it at the festival?
You better be.
Not that one. Okay, but you. Yeah, okay, yeah. But anyway, yeah, you have to experience it at some point. Like, one of the activities was basically recite like a affirmation, right? So just like tune into your heart, and what is your heart saying? So you started, and then slowly everybody kind of went round, and everybody's affirmation resonated with everybody there, if that makes sense. Like, it not just resonated, it was like, that's my affirmation, that's how my heart feels as well. And I thought about, you know, life teaches us that we're so different, when actually, when you strip it all back, we're exactly the same. You know, we have the same wants and the same needs and the same desires, which is, I want to feel safe, I want to feel loved, and I want to feel free enough to be myself without being judged, you know, and that goes beyond like color, class, etc. It goes beyond that, and it goes back to this, we are just human, you know, so let's connect and let's co-create and let's expand together. So I think the work that you're doing is beautiful. What is like the vision for your work? Where do you want to get to? Is it just, you just want to continue doing what you're doing, or do you have something like more focus? Like?
No, I mean, the vision for, I mean, there's a few different parts to my work, but human work, which is really starting to now take up a lot more space in my life. The vision is really to bring people together from all walks of life and help them become more human, which to me means to grow together, it means to heal together, and it means to find our own sense of belonging, even in all the difference that we're kind of talking about. So I feel very dedicated to that mission. Often people ask me, why do I care about that? And actually it's kind of selfish in a way. The reason I do that is because I need it. Of course, always. And it's like, you know, I often say, it's like when I open one of these circles, you know, and you've got like 60 faces staring at you, and you're talking about, you know, dropping in on what's going to happen during the experience. I often say, it's like, I'm here because when we get to, you know, it's Wednesday today, when we get to Sunday and I look around this circle and I understand you and I see the stories and the journey and I feel the change energetically and see the change in your posture and your body and your openness and your awareness, like, there's nothing, you know, I have my own beliefs around God, but there's no place that feels closer to God to me than being in that place. It feels full alignment, full in service. Part of that mission, as I said, I feel really passionate about is, people from all walks of life experiencing that. And I really feel that we're doing that really well from day one, just because, again, it adds more richness. But also I felt that, you know, when I came to that Conscious Festival like 3-4 years ago, you know, there were some projections coming up, like, who are all these people? Like, what's this thing? It feels like a bit like everyone's trying to kind of be someone. And actually a lot of that was my own projection, right? And also in personal development and healing, not that any of it's necessarily bad, although maybe there is some of it all has a purpose, there is that exclusivity. You know, and it isn't accessible, because if you came to me like 5 years ago and you were like, hey, come to this thing, and you shouldn't, I'd probably be like, I ain't fucking going to that shit. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? So it's that opening, so we can impact more people, and it feels less exclusive and it feels more like integrated. I deeply care about working with young people. It's something that I touched on before, you know, working with people in youth who are, you know, maybe in a similar circumstances to me, but what that's really coming through as, and often, you know, I'm not necessarily am sitting with a vision and I am kind of proactively moving towards a vision, but I'm also looking at what's being asked of me. And one of the things that's been asked of me constantly over the past like 2 to 3 years is like, when are you going to do rites of passage for young people? When are you going to do initiations? And so I'm really excited about stepping more into that. I said no to it this year just to be focused and to not sacrifice my own family on the sake of like, you know, helping others, and the work starts at home. You know, I gotta tend to what I've already created. And I think anchoring that, it's really, you know, we need initiations for young people to be initiated into really getting to know themselves and working on themselves and understanding themselves. But it's two-part. I think often what's forgotten is we forget to initiate the parents. So it's like you've got a parent who's had this life, and then maybe they're like, oh, okay, my child, like I feel like they need something, you know, like, let's be honest, social media is just like fucking everyone's shit up in a way right now, and especially young people. And then maybe the child goes and is initiated or has some kind of rites of passage, but the parent never had that. So then the child comes home to the parent, and the parent doesn't understand. So I really want to create a space where there is like a collective rite of passage of like, cool, we're initiating the young person who's at a certain point in their life, and also we're initiating the parent, that, you know, there's a responsibility for them, that if they're going to steward that child, to also be initiated in their own way. So really I'd love to do more work with children. I'd love to do more work with parents, and this to me feels like something, you know, that just it's not about saving the world. It's just about doing what's being asked of me, and if that makes a positive impact as a byproduct, and I can look after my family and provide for them, then that's just a massive bonus, you know.
Yeah. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. We'll be deeply appreciative. Join our revolution. The revolution starts within. We're going to be wrapping up soon, but before we start a podcast, we always open up with like meditation, cacao, Gurjeet drops us in, and then we end up praying, and you really shared such a beautiful prayer. And you hit on, you know, just then about like your relationship with God. Yeah. What does that look and feel like for you? When did God enter in, or when did you become conscious of God being there?
Yeah. I feel like I always, from a young age, had a connection to spirit, to God. I mean, I change whatever word I use. It doesn't matter for me. It's quite fluid in a way. I always remember this time when my mum would go into like Waitrose to do the shopping, and I'd be sitting in her car. I'd kind of just look at my hand, and I'd be like, whoa, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? I'd be like, we're here. Do you know what I mean? Though I just have these moments where I'd be like, what is this? What am I? Do you know what I mean? And I always remember that, this kind of connection to sort of like something a bit more ethereal. And so then as I went through my life, as I said, there was so much numbing that I feel like that kind of like switched off. And for me, I guess I would say the way that I experience God is really just in all the things around us. So I'm not necessarily thinking of like a particular, you know, there's like some thing or person like sitting in a chair, whatever. I really believe that the kind of God and spirit is within everything. And I'm not someone who believes in kind of like there's the good and the bad. I believe that it all is, you know, in my experiences of kind of meeting God, whether that was in like a plant medicine journey or just through like profound moments in my life, or just through like even just a basic meditation in the morning. What I really see is that there's a creative force of source energy that can flow in different ways, and it can create destruction as much as it can create beauty, and it can create life. And the way that my relationship is, I believe that it is my responsibility to build the infrastructure within my body, within my being, to let that energy flow through me, and to create things that for me make a positive impact. So for me, it's like the simple things of, you know, when I'm out, am I aware of like the animals that might be visiting, you know, and the natural world? Am I aware of like how the water sounds going down the stream? Am I aware of how the sun feels on my face? But for me, really, this planet, everything that is around us, creation, like that is God. And I say this a lot because when people come to human work, you know, we do some ceremonies, not plant ceremonies, but, you know, different ceremonies that, you know, connect people with that. And I always say, I'm not bringing you here to say you need to believe what I need to believe. For me, like the real essence of God is finding your own relationship with divinity, with source energy, that feels resonant to you. And that is so different. That can be practical. That can be the person who likes rock climbing, and when they're out on a mountain, they have a moment and they look and they're like, wow. That's God as much as me you know, waking up, and one of my biggest practices is prayer. When I'm not sure what to do, when I feel lost, I just pray for something higher than myself to come in and to help me and to guide me. And that's, I mean, done wonders on my life. So really I believe it's like, yeah, God is not to be given necessarily some construct. There's so many representations, and I think it's for us to find our own connection. But to me, it is the earth. It is what we're experiencing. It's here. It's our skin and our bones, and it's within us. And yeah, I love that. I love that devotion. Just devotion to whatever it is.
Yeah, there's that word.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I felt that, you know, with the meditation and the stuff, and for me, yeah, being around devoted people doesn't have to look a certain way, but like I'm devoted to humanity. In all of it. So
that's made me really emotional, because it's just, you know, I guess that's what our devotion to this podcast is as well, isn't it? It's like, you know, we just really want people to experience their fullness through how God sees them, not through the narratives that people have created. So then to have guests like yourself coming on that shares that same frequency, like, it's a real honor. So thank you. We usually close by saying, what do you want to say to the viewers? Do you have like a closing message? But I would actually like you, if you feel comfortable, would you like to close in prayer?
Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
that would be really wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing then, because it feels like an edge being asked to do it on a podcast.
Sure.
All right, cool. So maybe we'll just close down our eyes, take a deep breath, and let the breath go. And just calling upon spirit and creator as we know them, in whatever way feels resonant to us. And just taking a moment to really feel, as you breathe, the energy within your body, the flow. How does your skin feel? How does your heartbeat feel? How does the texture and feeling of your breath feel? And knowing that as you breathe into that all of this is divinity, what's inside you, what's around you, and that everything here is designed and here to support you if you let it. And to actually just feel the humanity within you and let that be enough to guide you forward, to enable you to work on what you need to work on, to enable you to see yourself more clearly, to be seen more clearly. And knowing in this moment just to pray that it's not about fixing yourself, it's not becoming some version of projection that others want for you or that society puts on you, but really it is just to be here, to breathe, to access more of yourself, to connect more to everything around you. And so just giving thanks for this podcast, for this moment, giving thanks for this opportunity, for this open pathway of shared connection, giving thanks to yourself, giving thanks to all the challenges you've experienced that give you an opportunity to access more of yourself, to become more human, to grow, to heal, to find your own sense of belonging, and know that being born and just being here and breathing is enough for you to deserve that. And that whatever you've done, whatever you've experienced, whatever shame you might carry, whatever decisions feel like the wrong decisions, that you can always just take the next step to being more in alignment with yourself, more in alignment with creation, and that your beliefs are your beliefs, and that it's for you to tune in and find your own authenticity within that, not for someone else to dictate or that you have to follow someone else, but actually just to follow yourself and your heart and follow this beautiful creative energy. So giving thanks for this moment. Tainoti. Aho.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Yeah. Deeply honoured to have you on, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. If people want to connect with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Jack Villiers. You should find me. Human Work is www.humanwork.life. What do we have coming up? We've got in September 24th to 28th, we have the Human Work Experience, which is like our week-long, basically doing the work that makes you more human. It's challenging, it's
Where
confronting. It's in Yorkshire, actually,
nice,
up in the north. It's challenging, it's confronting, but for those that have been, which are many now, it's also a lot of fun. I really believe that like part of being human and doing the work on yourself is like it should also be enjoyable.
Sure.
You know, and you should be able to actually have those textures of like, the challenging stuff and like working on that, but also like the joy in letting that stuff in. So we'll be doing that September 24th to 28th in the UK, and then we have lots of other stuff coming up. I'll be giving the talk at Soul Revolution Festival, so looking forward to hanging there and bringing my family. And so just hit me up if you have a question, if any of this resonates, and if you don't, blessings on your path anyway.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
As Jack said, you can check him out at the Soul Rev Festival in August. Oh my gosh, it's only like a few weeks away. Yeah, wow. So just reach out, connect. If you see him around, I'm sure people can come up to you and have a convo.
I'll be the guy like wrangling 2 kids and
Okay.
pulling some trolley somewhere. Just
Sure.
normal dadding, basically.
Normal dadding.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining in. Until next time, may God's love, blessing, joy, and ease be with you all. Thank you.
The revolution starts within.